Okay, good afternoon. I'll call the meeting to order. I'll begin by acknowledging we are in Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Neil Hart and I'm chairing today's panel. With me is Brent McIntyre to my left and Kent Sealand to my far left. The assessor today is Merrick Froelich and the recording secretary is Michelle Neifert. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements of the applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and no one speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that they mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following a swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed and recorded, and we part up the public record. So can you do the honors, Michelle?
Can you state your full name, please?
Merrick Froelich.
Do you swear that the evidence you want to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Can you state your full name, please? Do you swear that the evidence you want to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
No,
Oh, sorry.
but yes.
Where's Lightning? I'm just teasing.
Okay, Mr. Trump.
It's not even that. Michelle has this way of trying to make me laugh while she does it. She looks at me like
Well, he starts looking around.
I can't even look at it.
Okay, the first item on today's agenda is 1456 Church.
Yep.
So you can proceed.
File number is 19295. Roll number is 140639 60800. The original assessed value for the 2020 roll period using a reference date of April 1st, 2018 was $2,137,000. The applicant and I have had some discussions, and I'd like to make a recommendation today of $1,850,000. And I've made copies for the board members' review if they would like.
Okay.
No questions. I think you're asking.
No, I just
Keep my head up.
passing the evaluation along.
Thanks very much. That's right, you know.
Just gross rents in this older building, we'll see that it's, we felt this is fair.
Do you have a copy?
So, what was changed in here?
We adjusted the rent, and we adjusted the cap rate.
So I'm assuming the rent went down, the cap went up, and not the other way around.
Yep, that's correct. And the mailers on page 5 of my brief, if you want to see them.
Okay. And Jennifer, how do you feel about that?
We're in agreement.
Okay. Any questions from the panel?
No questions.
No questions.
Okay. Thank you. That concludes that one. The next property is 404 Yes Street.
File number is 194775. Roll number is 1409995400. We have assessed value of $7,302,000. And based on some discussions, I would like to make a recommendation of $9,036,000.
9 million.
No, sorry, 5 million, sorry. As you can imagine, sorry, Mr. Nepo. $5,936,000.
See, we do listen.
Yeah, it's, you know,
Sneak one of those in every once in a while.
no malicious intent.
Do you have a?
Yes, I do, gentlemen.
We're ready.
What's that?
I'm ready for you.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, no, I could probably do one as well, just because I think, so we could have a clean one in the green.
This is it, Barry.
No, is it not? Well,
No,
sorry.
it's sick.
Maybe I made the wrong copies. You know what? I don't have copies of the gentleman, I'm sorry.
Is it mine?
No. You know what? Disregard that, gentlemen.
Okay.
I'm sorry, because you remember, Eric, in the conversation we had with the cap rate? We did some case management ahead of time.
Okay, so again, rent and cap. then?
Rent and cap, yeah. I'm sorry.
So, I'm sorry, what is,
The new value
Yeah.
is $5,936,000.
36?
Yeah, 936.
And again, about the,
Not
not
what you
9
thought.
million or the 6
No,
million.
there's a lot of numbers going around. 5.9. So it's on the record.
We had discussions last night and with the other properties, so that's why.
That's right. All right. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Red.
Thank you.
So we will move on. We'll move on to 51 Burmac Road.
I might just have a moment to,
Can you state your name, please?
Bradford, Scott.
Do you swear that the evidence about the date of this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, on 51 Burmac Road, you can proceed.
File number is 192972. Roll number is 06007950000. We have assessed value of $12,477,000 that would like to be confirmed. Parcel use is industrial light manufacturing. Buildings have been built between 1976 and 2002. We're using an effective age for this building of 1990. The wall heights in different areas are between 14 and 25 feet. We have a land area of 850,983, and we have a leasable area of 163,56, and we have a land cut plan area of 5.31. If you look at page 2, you may be familiar with the location of this building. It's just south of the Mint on Lagimodier. So it's listed as 51 Burmac, but Burmac's the side street that connects onto it, and it has clear visibility from Lagimodier. So top of page 1 is the sort of front picture of it. Page 2 is from the side. And top of page 3 is the loading area, where it says welcome to Monarch Industries. And then on the bottom of page 3 shows where there's the extra land. This is a picture facing southwest, so this is on La Genaude, almost parallel to the Mint, just where it's facing southwest. And what we have here is the overhead shot of where it's located at. So it's just south of Fermor, north of Bishop Grandin, and it's in between Southdale and the developments at Royal Mint Drive. So when we look at page 5, with regards to this property, you see the location and development potential of it. So the building has 5.3, ratio of 5.3 to 1. So we believe that there's potential for subdevelopment or an extra building to be built on the most eastern portion of the lot, and which is why the top of page 5 sort of shows that extra land. And what I've done is because, this area per se is not really industrial park. We have like the Mint, we have, it's a federal government building just to the northwest of the subject property, and then we have this building here. And there's not really any other industrial in the neighborhood here. And so the next industrial area would be there's a bit of industrial just off of Niagara Road on the northeast corner of Niagara Road in Lagimodier, and then obviously to the north of that you have St. Boniface Industrial Park. What I've done here is I've looked at the zoning here and whatnot. So we have this building listed as industrial, but the pink that I'm showing here is listed as park, but we do believe that there's developmental potential there. Property owner has been compliant with regards to completing their income expense mailers. Some of it is a bit hard to read, but what we have here, and I have a full copy of it here if you guys would like it, but as we go through the process here with regards to the actual rents, and let me just double check on this. So we have a monthly rent listed at $78,567 times 12, divided by the 164. We're showing a model rent of $5.85, which is higher than the actuals that we're using at 508 that you see on page 10. What I've also done with the income expense mailer is on the bottom of it. This is an excerpt from it that I've just done a print screen, just showing what the statement of income is that we received from the income expense mailer from the property owner. So once we factor in the amortization costs and the financing costs, their total net income is $1,003,854. The model net income that we're using is $763,325, and the applicant is using a net income of $607,469. There has been a sale of this property that you can see on page 8. There's a sale that took place on February 20th of 2014 for $12,450,000. There's some details on the sale with regards to the aspects of it. And then you can actually see on page 5 and page 6 where the lease is in place. So there's a 15-year lease in place for this property. So at $585 for the first 5 years, $615 for the next 5 years, and $645 for the remainder term of it. Will the property still be continued used as an industrial office? Yes, it will be. And on page 9 shows the financing arrangements of it. So what we're looking at here is they put a cash down on the $12,450,000 sale. They put a cash down of $2,500,000 on it, and they financed, $9,950,000 of it. And this is in 2004. We all know that the markets have appreciated in value since 2004 industrial properties, and so essentially the mortgage on this property is greater than what the applicant's looking for assessed value. Page 10. So what we have here is we have a leasable area of 160,356 using a model rent of $5.08, which is lower than the actuals. Coming up with a potential rent of $814,608 using 2.5% vacancy. Using expenses of 2% and shortfall of $375, we come up with a net operating income of $763,325. Using a cap rate of 6.5%, we come up with a value of $11,743,000. I will discuss, after I look at the market rent comparables, how we valued the land for this property. So once we added the land at $734,000, we came up with assessed value of $12,477,000. What we've done here is we tried to get some comparable rents of different rents in the marketplace. We have a range from $4.22 to $6.53. They're all across the city of Winnipeg. You know, the leasable area is 160,000 square feet, so that's what we're using here. Land comparables. So what we've done here for land comparables is we've determined the land of in excess of $199,628. What we've used is so if you're looking at page 12 here, sorry, it's going fast, so let me just get a glass of water. Thanks. We have a land area of 199,628, and which works out to 4.58 acres. And we determined the land value to be $3.67. What I have here is I have some comparables. They're not always going to be perfectly matched up with regards to the zoning, but usually when it comes to potential development, you know, the possibilities of it getting rezoned or sold is possible. And here's some comparables that I have here. I have comparable one at 645 Marion. It's 41,179, just under an acre. It sold in August of 2015 for $500,000 at $12.14. I have another one at 975 Marion that sold in March of 2012 for $390,000, which works out to $6.15 a square foot. But it's also almost 6 years away from the reference period, the reference date of April 1st, 2018. I got a property on Beaver Hill where it's $182,092. It's a sworn, that sale took place in December of 2016 for $2.8 million. We have a sales price per square foot of $15.38. And we have comparable number 4, which is closest to the subject property, which is almost directly northeast of it on Niagara Road. It's 62,949 square feet. It sold in January of 2018 for $575,000, and that works out to $9.13 a square foot. So in our estimation, our $3.67 that we're using is quite fair. On page 10, what we have, or page 13, pardon me. Page 13, I got a picture of comparable one. It's just located east of the corner of Marion and Archibald. You can see the shape of it there. Number 2 is in between Dawson and Lagimodiere. And there you can see a picture of it right, you know, on the left-hand side. It's just to the west of Lagimodiere and Marion, and right across from the Maple Leaf plant. 421 is a bit unique and distinctive. And so what we've done with this sale here is they're actually building an apartment complex here. So when we looked at the sales for this, so there's a community club or community resource center that has a kids daycare, and the back portion of it where they have a significant amount of land of that 182,000 square feet, they're developing that portion into multifamily. And so we see a lot of unique situations where, to increase the density of the city, they're building apartment blocks and complexes in areas that we've never seen before. Another example of that was on Pembina Highway, where they took behind a Burger King.
If I might just interrupt for a moment, the information that the assessor is referring to, and I believe you're referring to the information on page 15,
Yeah.
it's post-reference.
Well, our information here with regard to the sale of that is December 16th of 2013.
I understand that, but if you look at the information on your page 15, all of the data that you're referring to there is from 2019.
With regards to what?
This is your information that you're talking about here.
I'm just showing the permits that are getting developed here. So what we're saying here is this is what the land sold for. There's permits in place.
Post-reference. 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 Post-reference.
but it shows you the developmental purposes of why they purchased it. To me, I think you're grasping at straws here, in my opinion, but anyways,
This isn't a sale per se, I mean, he's using it as an example of changing land use, that's all.
Post preference.
Doesn't matter. It's not a sale.
people buy land lots of times for speculation. I'm just showing the fact that this is being developed as an apartment block. And my final comparable, so page 16 shows the permit of what's taking place there. And page 17 shows a comparable number 4, which is, as you could actually see it, where it's located at with the red dot. You can see where the subject property is on Burmac here, just on the opposite side of it, and how that one sold, you know, on January of 19 for $9.13. So I'm reiterating our 367 is quite fair. Capitalization rates. So what we have here is an overview of the cap rates that we've used here in terms of our study. We're showing cap rates that for properties are between 9.5 and 8.9%. What I also have here that I'm sure many of you looked at as well is with regards to the decision with regards to our cap rate study and our cap rate evidence. What we have here is we're showing a range of cap rates that show between 4.9 to 8%. We're using for the subject property, if I do remember correctly, we're using 6.5. And we also have a decision with regards to why we decided to take the 5% management fee out. We said it as a non-recoverable costs. There's been plenty of discussions on those. I can discuss this further if you wish. But to expedite the process, I'm just giving an overview here, and I am open to questions. In our analysis on page 20 with regard to non-recoverable expenses, this shows a sample of properties, why we feel comfortable with only using the 2% shortfall rates. And on the last page, just continuing that we're following IAAO standards. That concludes my formal presentation. I'm open to questions.
Questions?
I do. I want to take you to your page 6. And there you show information which I understand you advise the board represents the lease on this property.
That is correct. That's the information that we received from the income and expense mailers.
In your preparation for this hearing, in particular with this property, do you have an opportunity to review the department's previous files on these?
Due to time constraints, no, we did not.
Now, you show here that the lease commences in February of 2014, correct?
That is correct.
And the lease occupant, tenant, is Monarch Industries?
That is correct.
Now, if we take you to your page 8, you've indicated that there is a sale on this property.
Yep.
Yes. Now, can you tell me who the vendor was?
It's a member company.
The vendor.
The vendor or the purchaser, Monarch Industries.
And that's actually, so your sale date is February 20th of 2014.
Yep.
And from your lease information on page 6, Monarch Industries is also the tenant, correct?
Yep.
Does that not constitute a sale leaseback?
It does, but there's a lot of situations whereby leasebacks are used to establish market value.
Right.
And I feel that the rent that we're using here is indicative of market conditions.
Are you aware that the IAAO standards on sales, verification of sales, indicates that you should preclude sale leaseback sales?
Yeah, well, there's many situations with regards to when it comes to leasebacks, portfolio sales for cap rate studies. And when I'm looking at the overall value of it, I understand what the IWAO says, but I also, let me finish. I also know that other people in the marketplace look at lease backs and they do have some merit with regards to information, with regards to creating market value.
So let me come back again to the question. You're aware that the IAA standards on sale verifications indicate that sale leaseback transactions should not be considered.
I'm aware of it, but I don't necessarily agree with it in all circumstances.
So if I understand you correctly, then you've provided a reference to IAA standards on your page 21.
Yeah.
Is it the department's position or is it your position that they're applicable sometimes and not others?
During my experiences at the Boardroom Division, I've talked with people, I've exposed myself to hearings where people do consider leasebacks to be an indication of market value.
So let me come back to the question again that was asked. You provided information on your page 21 which references the IAA standard on ratio studies. Is it your position or the department's position that we should apply the IAA standards in some cases and selectively not others?
I think I've asked and answered that on 2 occasions
I don't
already.
think so, which is why I asked it again.
When we're looking at information, we're looking at a variety of sources. We follow the IAAO as a guideline, but when it looks at the overall market value of this property with regards to establishing market value, I believe the market rents that we're using here is indicative of the marketplace. So I have nothing further to say on this.
Okay, let's move on. Yeah, you've asked it 3 times and answered it the same way 3 times. That's all we're going to get.
He has non-responded 3 times. Let's talk about just for a moment the additional value attributed to. You're suggesting there's additional value attributable to lands here?
That is correct.
Now, and you did an analysis of the additional lands?
I looked at the property, I looked at the land to building ratio, I looked at the potential for development, and I felt that there is potential for development.
Okay. So, in terms of the subject location, if we look at your page 4, it appears that the lands you are referring to are at the east end of the site.
That is correct.
Do you know where the services are to this property?
Oh, I do not know where the services are to this
In
property.
your review of the land, wouldn't that be a consideration?
Due to time constraints, what we are looking at is what we look at the potential for development.
I understand that, but if you were attributing a particular value to the lands, wouldn't that be a relevant consideration?
It would be, and I was following the history of the property that had taken place in the 2018 and 2016, where we have additional land values for this property.
And so my question related to the services, and if I understand you correctly, that was something you did not investigate.
That is correct.
Now, in terms of additional development, I believe your testimony was, quote, that you believe there was development potential. Is that your statement?
Well, looking at the land to building ratio, I do believe that there's development potential.
So if I understand you correctly, you've applied some kind of a formula related to the size of the building and the size of the lands?
That's what we use, a 4-to-1 building ratio with regards to industrial properties. There can be some variance with regard to that. Looking at the layout of the subject property, I felt that there was development for potential.
So this property was built in 1976, correct?
Yes.
And there was a subsequent expansion in 2002?
Yep.
So physically, since you talked about post-reference physical development, as of the assessment year, 18 years have elapsed without any additional structures built on this site, correct?
That is correct. 18 years. 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 That is correct.
And 18 years have lapsed without any subdivision on this site, is that correct?
You know what? If a business chooses not to subdivide or look at the potential subdivision, that's their choice. Maybe they want to do through some expansions. But with regards to your answer and with regards to our effective age for the building, the first part of the building was 106,000 square feet at 14 feet. That was built in 1976. Then subsequently, 54,000 square feet of the building was built in 2002 at 25 feet. So which is why I think an effective age of 1990 for this building is quite fair.
And so I wasn't talking about the effective age of the building.
I thought you had mentioned that. I apologize.
Let's come back to the question that was asked with respect to a subdivision of this site. This property has been owned for a considerable number of years since it was initially built and then expanded. And in all of that time, isn't it true that the property has never been subdivided?
Like I've stated in the past, if an ownership group chooses not to subdivide, it does not preclude the fact that it does not have value. And there's a lot of market evidence that says with regards to it in published reports that in situations where there is excess or surplus land in the situation, it usually derives higher rents. And in this situation, I'm comfortable with the rents that we're using.
Can you tell me what the zoning is on this property?
Pardon me?
What the zoning is on this property?
I had mentioned it's industrial and it is M2.
And do you know what the setback requirements are under the M2 zoning regulations?
No, I do not.
Have you investigated with city planners about the possibility of further development on this site?
I was just continuing on what had taken place in the previous decisions.
And so let me again ask you, did you make inquiries with the city planning department regarding any potential subdivision or expansion of this property?
I did not.
Have you defined the lands that you've associated? Just to be clear, I believe you said it was 199,628 square feet.
That is correct.
Have you defined those as excess lands or surplus lands?
It's surplus land.
Surplus. Surplus lands by definition mean that they cannot be separated, correct?
That's the market rent that we've used. This as surplus. This is the value we've attributed to it at $3.67. If it would have been excess lands, so there's a fine medium with regards to what we do here and what we believe is fair to the property owner, and we believe that there's $3.67 of a rent per square foot is fair. There's a lot of market information stating this. My comparables show that, and so I feel comfortable with the value that we've used.
So just to clarify, you suggested $3.67 of the rent?
No, per square foot for the land.
Land. Okay. So let me come back to the question. You're aware of the difference in appraisal theory as between excess lands and surplus lands, are you not?
That is correct.
And you agree with me that surplus lands by definition are not severable or separately developable, correct?
That is correct.
And
But we've also looked at the situation when we came to the valuation of this, being mindful of what is out there, but the land does have value to it, which is why we've used the values that we've used.
in appraisal theory, would you agree with me that surplus lands may have additional value, or they may not have additional value, or they may actually be a negative value attributed?
Every situation is different, and you can't have one answer to that question, sir.
In terms of the definition of surplus lands,
Yes.
according to appraisal theory, would you agree with me that surplus lands can have a positive value, they can have no contributory value, or they can actually have a negative value for the property?
I've answered that before. You need to go through a site-specific evaluation to make a determination of that.
Site-specific theory.
Every situation is different.
Now, I want to turn you to your rental comparables on your page 11. And none of these are located in the same Boniface area, correct?
That is correct.
And in fact, The first 4 of them are located in Eastern Industrial Park,
That is correct.
and the last one is in Fort Garry.
Yeah. Well, the second last one is in Port Garry. The last one's probably the closest to, at McLeod Avenue, you know, which is on the east side of the city of Winnipeg. There's not as many industrial parks, well, for this type of building manufacturing that we have.
So who occupies 861 McLeod?
It's a Woodland Supply.
Yeah, were you aware that that is a modern arm's length lease?
We are only as good as the information that we get from the income expense of the process.
You didn't investigate that. Being your best rental comparable, you didn't investigate that.
We're only as good as the information that we're provided. A perfect example of that is the Kernahan leases that we received from, in the past.
Now, if I understand the information that you show on your page 10, the vacancy loss that's been applied to this property is 2.5%.
That is correct.
Is that the only evidence with respect to vacancy that you have within your evidence?
No, I have lots of rebuttal information that I'll be presenting later on.
So let me ask you now about your brief. This is the only evidence within your brief with respect to vacancy, correct?
Model-generated vacancy based on published reports by outside agencies, and we're being consistent in our process.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Okay. Brent, do you have any questions of the assessment?
I do. I think both parties mentioned the excess land or surplus land is on the east side, facing east.
Yes.
Well, I'm looking at the,
It's actually on the west side.
West
Yeah,
side,
looking-
sorry.
on the photo, and it shows
Yeah.
the west side.
Yeah, it's the west side.
And there is access to that riverage because there is a side road on the aerial photo.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay, my next question is related to the sales mailing. Page 8. According to the person who filled it in, there was an appraisal completed on the property upon sale. Did the department ever receive that appraisal?
No, we did not.
Those are my only questions.
Okay, any questions, Ken?
Is this the former borough's computer plant?
It was Unisys, I think?
This is
Previously, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting though about the sale that take place is that the mortgage is, you know, more than what the applicant's looking for. On page 9, where you see the financing of the first mortgage at $8 million and the second mortgage at $1,950,000 on a sale that was in 2014.
That's all. Any questions?
Another thing to look at though, is I've said this before, despite Mr. Fortune's questions, on page 32, it states, so I'm looking at page 9 of my brief, it says, was the purchase price based on the property's net operating income? And it said no, and then there's a sale leaseback, so. And were there any financial details or investment prospects available at the conclusion of the sale? We didn't have access to any of that information on pages 32 and 33. No, lines 32, 33, page 9.
Any more questions?
That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, in terms of the excess land, did you simply take anything in excess of 4 to 1?
That's what I worked out to. It worked to 199. So when I looked at the plan area, so I think 160, 356 times 4 equals 641, 424 minus 850, 983. It actually, we actually used less, and Mr. Boardroom's number, it's a bit higher. It actually works out to 209,469, but because we're dealing with our operating system, it worked out to, 199,628. But if we use greater than a 4-to-1 ratio, the land area would be 209,469.
Okay. Did you measure that sort of vacant space that's out there?
Well, I think that's a fair, like, if you're doing an eye test of it, I think when you look at that potential development, so say, for example, with regards to the selling of it, with regards to how they would decide to subdivide it, I think you could easily find 200,000 square feet in this property using the northwest portion of it.
Okay, and what's the cutoff when determining something's got excess land? I mean,
Well,
4-to-1 is a common number for a good industrial property would have a 4-to-1. But I've seen lots that had like 4.5 or 4.8 to 1.
And there's some of them that are even lower than that. So there's a lot of examples that I could think of. Mr. Boardroom, I have one with regards to the egg producing plant coming up on Kernan. I'm looking at the Sobeys on Exterior Industrial Park. I'm looking at Manitoba Liquor Commission where they did an expansion. Those are all examples whereby the land to building ratio is less than 4-to-1. And to me, I guess the department's the position on this is this does have easily potential for it does have value to it. So with regards to excess and surplus land, when we looked at the market valuation of it, like some of them it's strictly surplus because it's a back portion of it, there's limited access to it, but if an organization wanted to expand their operations, they can, so it does have some value. Because if they didn't have that to expand, then they wouldn't be able to expand and they'd have to look at other venues. So that's how we looked at it.
Okay, thank you for that. You can proceed with your presentation.
I do have some rebuttal evidence with respect to this matter in two parts. I think I'm one copy short because this will also have applicability to another property that we're dealing with this morning as well, or sorry, this afternoon. Now, this is an excerpt from the Appraisal of Real Estate, 3rd Canadian edition. You'll see there the header in the middle of the page, excess land and surplus land, and the particular points that I want to draw to your attention here is in the second paragraph under that header. Excess land is land that is not needed to serve or support the existing or proposed improvement, and I will just refresh the board's memory that the assessor has agreed that the lands here are surplus and not excess.
I went on both ways on that because of the uniqueness of this property. So it can be excess, it can be surplus. It's a unique parcel of land here. Sorry about that. I apologize.
And so,
but
that being the case, then I would like to reopen my cross-examination of the assessor. This was not his testimony.
Well, okay, one question.
It may or may not be one question.
My answers are going to change that.
Okay. You will agree with me that the definition of surplus land is that it is not severable and not separately developable, and you've already agreed with that, correct?
The definitions are clearly stated here. I believe this could be either excess or surplus because of the uniqueness of the situation and how the layout is.
Okay. And you'll agree with me that in terms of excess, which then would possibly not, by definition, would be severable and separately developable. You've already acknowledged testified that you have made no investigation with respect to setback requirements with the property planning department regarding that, correct?
Well, we're kind of going over old ground here.
Well, except that now the assessor has interjected into my rebuttal evidence and seems to be amending his testimony. And I'm certainly going to invite the board to review the video and his answers previous.
Okay, go ahead with your presentation.
So in the substance,
So I'm going to answer this. No, okay.
The cross-examination is over.
Thank you.
You'll have a chance for rebuttal.
so under the header excess land and surplus land in the second paragraph, under there I've already read you the first line. The second line goes on to say that the highest and best use of the excess land may or may not be the same as the highest and best use of the improved parcel. Excess land has the potential to be sold separately and must be valued separately. Goes on to say at the bottom of the next paragraph, surplus land does not have an independent highest and best use and may or may not contribute value to the improved property. Now, the second part of my rebuttal evidence is an article from the Appraisal Journal in the spring of 2015. So as I said, this is an article by Joseph Webster. It's titled "A Discussion of Excess Land Concepts and Theory." It appeared in the Appraisal Journal in the spring of 2015, and I will turn your attention. Firstly, the pages are numbered at the bottom, to page 106, and I highlighted the section there that appraisers must exercise caution when adding the value of excess lands to the value of the rest of the property, because the sum of the parts may or may not equal the whole. And on the next page, it goes on to say, in some markets, a limited pool of potential purchasers for the land that is recognized as excess could result in a marketing period of several years. As a result, adding the individual value of the land that is determined to be excess to the value of the remainder tract may overstate the market value of the property as a whole. It also goes on to say on the next page, on page 108, for tracts in which excess land is not legally subdivided on the effective date of the appraisal, the method to determine additional tax expense as a result of the excess land may vary for different municipalities. We know that the assessor hasn't done anything related to that. For examples, interviews with 3 assessors in its locations in the state suggest that there is not a consensus on the way that in which excess land is handled. For taxing purposes, with some assessors using a single unit value for the entire tract, others using a different unit value for that, for what is deemed excess. The IAA also confirms that there is not a single method used to value land for assessment purposes. There is no standard application of a ratio of building to land area. Now, the assessor has not provided any evidence of any investigation in his determination of the additional value attributed for these lands, not in terms of development potential, not in terms of what even might be developable, either in terms of setbacks or the city planning. Similarly, there are costs related to subdivision, there are costs related, dedication costs related to the city, none of which have entered into the assessor's analysis of the land, additional land value that was attributed. And so with that, I'm open to questions on my rebuttal evidence.
Do you have any questions on the rebuttal?
Is there a lot of subjectivity that take place in with regards to surplus and excess land in the marketplace with regards to what one perceives as highest and best use? Is there a lot of subjectivity, like opinions of developmental potential for properties?
Well, I think that when any individual is looking at a property, there are many steps to the analysis that will go into it. The conclusions that you will arrive at from that analysis, with the analysis leading you to those leading you to those conclusions, I don't think has a great deal of subjectivity to it. For example, and I'm not sure the panel has seen this cycle, but I'm certainly aware of industrial properties with land to building ratios far greater than this one, as high as 7-to-1 or higher than that, for which additional land value has not been attributed by the department. I'm aware that the modeling does not account for quote-unquote excess or surplus lands. That's why the additional values are attributed. But the model similarly doesn't account for a lower land building ratio. There is no negative adjustment to that effect arriving from the model, nor have I ever seen an assessor come in suggesting that we should deduct an amount related to a land shortage, if you will.
So what, are you implying that we don't add any value to excess or surplus lands to properties?
I'm saying it's done manually, not within the model.
Because there's an element of subjectivity, isn't there?
Well, I'm not quite done yet. It requires an analysis. Okay. And so if the model doesn't account for site size, which is why you see the manual adjustment. But similarly, there's not an equal treatment on the other side, where you have a building, for example, with a 2.5-to-1 land to building ratio, and there are lots of those. The city doesn't come in and make a downward adjustment because of the lack of land. They add it on one hand and they don't deduct it on the other.
But there's an amount of subjectivity to that, right? With regards to making a decision here.
It's minimized when you do a proper analysis of each site.
But in a mass appraisal system, how can you do that?
So I'm not quite done, and that's where I was going to go with this. And so and you've already indicated that this needs to be on a site-specific basis. And so when you do an appropriate analysis, you can then, in your conclusions to the analysis, make that adjustment or not, or with a different land amount. Now, I believe, and just let me double check, the model generated adjustment that shows up from the department when the 2020 assessment was set is already on there. So nobody sat down and did an individual adjustment. They just bought the land value, and they don't do the same when there's a shortage of land.
Okay. So if the owner wanted to expand their operations by 40,000 square feet, would they have the capabilities of doing that?
And absolutely, as you've indicated, we've got a hearing coming up on Kernahan, where they did exactly that, and the land building ratio is much lower there now. So it will be interesting to see whether there is an adjustment going the other way on that one.
Okay. So, but there are a lot of examples where just because a business owner chooses to expand does not mean that there's not, it's all based on what's in the best interest of the business.
Well, except that we're not valuing the business. We're not talking about business value or business operations. We're talking hypothetically about an empty building and the underlying lands and what that would be worth in the open market in terms of value as of the record stage.
But if the layout is done in such a way where land to building ratio is not as important, because
we're flogging a dead horse.
you know, okay. So to finish the question that wasn't answered. So would that if the operation wanted to expand by 40,000 square feet?
We're talking about.
Let me finish, please.
Business.
Okay. No, if the operation, would there not be value to that land if they made the business decision to expand their operations? Would that not have value?
Again, and so for property assessment purposes, we're not assessing the business. We do not consider business value.
I didn't ask that. I said if the
No,
but if the operation.
And so to help you maybe clarify your question. You talked about operational, you talked about if a business decided to expand. We're talking about, we are to be assessing or valuing the actual physical assets of that property without consideration of the business operations within that real estate.
If the owner wanted to expand, would they have development to expand their operations at this site?
To expand their operations? I believe that's true.
Okay, so would that land not have value if they had the potential? Because if the land value is very small, they would not be able to do that. So wouldn't that not have value?
I don't believe that these lands, and so we're going to disagree about what to attribute. I'm not disagreeing that in this case,
Okay.
there are excess lands, we come up with very different valuations.
Okay. So with regard to the setbacks that you've stated in the past, or in previous questions, could a building not be built with the same sort of setback that the current building has, just on the western portion of it?
I have not done those investigations because I've treated the lands as surplus.
Are you familiar with Northgate Shopping Mall Complex?
Not particularly.
You're not familiar with regards to the expansion there and the
That's
building footprint?
Retail?
But it's with regards to land and
And
operations.
so-
An argument could be made that, we needed the land for parking, and obviously they didn't, and they expanded their operations quite significantly. Would that not be applicable in market conditions?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. We're talking about a retail valuation versus an industrial valuation?
But with regards to building and land to building ratio, parking lots, capabilities of expansion, would there not be a parallel there?
Well, and so let's talk about Polo Park, let's talk about Granite Park.
Okay,
let's talk
we're
about-
getting way out in the left.
No other
field.
questions.
Let's,
Except
no,
that
never mind.
It is the
We're
assessor who
moving
brought
on
these
with your
up.
presentation.
So the first place I'm going to start, and you'll recall a question the assessor about sale leaseback. We have included that information within our evidence at pages 21, 22, 23. On page 22, under section 5.9, very clearly sets out, and as you get towards the last part of that paragraph, sales involved in leasebacks are generally invalid because the sale price is unlikely to represent the market value of the property. This can be determined only by further verification of the sale, and I will suggest to you that the city has made no such inquiry in response to their receipt of the sales verification form. In terms of the property itself, I can tell you that I have been in here on previous appeals on this property. As I have previously indicated, that this is a sale leaseback. We have not relied on the sale leaseback lease rate or the sale price. Neither relates to the real estate itself, rather it relates to the capitalization rate reflecting the risk of that business remaining in that location. An example would be 230 Panet is another sale leaseback circumstance that we do not use. Another one would be the former Tamro Phillips plant in St. Boniface Industrial Park. They sold with very different cap rates because Tamro was a lot more unstable. Panet Road with the Ukraine operation in there is a lot more stable. They sold at very different rates, business related, not related to the real estate. So I go through a fairly lengthy discussion of the property itself on page 3. I do at the bottom note the definition of surplus land. It is my view that the site size of this property has resulted in some surplus lands, and we have provided a separate valuation with respect to that. It was, in fact, as indicated in the questioning, It was once upon a time owned and occupied by Unisys. It actually sat vacant for a couple of years after Unisys vacated, prior to these guys moving in. The improvements on this site have relatively low ceiling height, clear ceiling height, and you can see that within our information at page 18. This is from the city assessment department records. You've got 106,000 square feet of this industrial building with 14-foot wall height. That is inadequate in terms of certainly modern expectations. It's been inadequate since the time it was built. The last time I recall seeing 14-foot wall heights was for industrial properties, typically flex warehouses built in the 60s. This was built by Unisys because the use of the property at that time, that met their needs. But we're not talking about the business needs, we're talking about what are the physical assets. And so here we have roughly 2/3 of the space with a very low clear ceiling height. That, in my view, constitutes additional risk to this property. We do show an overhead shot of the property on page 4. I do agree that the surplus lands are located on the west side. We can go through our rental comparables to begin with. We show a number of rental comparables on page 8. We have a total building area here of 162,000. We have a leasable area a little north of 160,000 square feet, and so when I was seeking rental comparables, I sought out larger ones, and this is what we have here. You see a range in the rents, and they have an average of $386 and a median of $4.08 per square foot. I go through some detail with respect to some of the leases. I can tell you that I have personally inspected a number of these properties previously. In the end, I have chosen a rate of $4.50 per square foot overall. Again, I have disregarded the sale leaseback for the reasons already stated, and so mathematically applying the $4.50 rent, we come up with $721,602 of the gross potential rent, subject to a further adjustment for the excess land after we get through. I have done an analysis based on the Johnson report. This is a publication that comes out twice a year. I do know that the assessment department subscribes to it. It comes out in June of each year. It comes out in December of each year. The information that we've looked at here is contained within their December 2017 report. I have summarized the details for both St. Boniface and Winnipeg in general, starting at page 9 and continuing.
Go ahead.
So the,
What was we waiting for?
I was waiting for the panel member to catch up.
Okay. That's right, yeah. Go ahead, thank you, I appreciate it.
And so on page 11, we show there the vacancy rates. You'll see there at the top of page 11, that's a table that shows overall vacancy rates for all industrial properties. That includes owner-occupied, that includes government buildings, and by definition, An owner-occupied building will have 0 vacancy. So those vacancy rates are somewhat distorted. Here, where we are applying an income approach and a hypothetical rent to the property, we are hypothetically offering a vacant building for acquisition. When we take a look, excuse me, when we take a look at the 2 tables below that for industrial single-tenant investment properties and for industrial multi-tenant industrial properties, you'll see there that the vacancy rates are significantly higher. So when you exclude the distorting owner-occupied properties, you end up with a much higher rate. In addition to that, we argue that you also need to make an allowance for collection loss. Now, that is, we show the definition of that on 12. Collection loss simply means it's a deduction for rents which are not recoverable by landlords, and there are often instances when a tenant vacates, goes under, there are non-recoverable rents associated with that, so it's not simply a matter of assigning a vacancy rate. You need to assign a vacancy and bad debt rate. So based on all of that, we are applying for this property located in St. Boniface a 5% rate. You'll recall when looking at the assessor's information, it's 2.5%. Now turn to shortfall. There is no disagreement with respect to the shortfall rate of $375 a square foot. We maintain that the non-recovered expenses, which should be applied here, should be at a rate of 7%, for the reasons already gone through in our separately filed, extensive study, detailed, transparent. 7% is the correct number. We do dispute the model cap rate of 6.5% on this property. This property, as I've already indicated, poses a significant risk with 2/3 of the building having a 14-foot wall height. That's not the type of industrial property that certain current industrial standards would be looking for in the open market. So as that's one of the factors, so that based on our separately filed industrial capitalization rate study, which I believe that members have seen already, I'm happy to answer questions about it. 7.25% is the rate that we've applied to this property. We have looked at industrial lands. In particular, I looked at lands in St. Boniface Industrial Park. As the assessor indicated in his description, certainly the St. Boniface Industrial Park are the lands closest. The sales range, there are as old for one of them, is 2012, and certainly one as recent as 2017. They were all developable sites ready for development with services readily available. As surplus lands, we apply, because we are applying additional value to the lands, not severable in our view, and that's been the position that we've established previously. The nominal value of $1 per square foot is what we're applying to those lands. So our adjustment is going to be $209,000 rounded. Based on all of that on page 15, we're looking for a reduction to $8,588,000. And I am open to questions.
Any questions?
So I have some rebuttal information, and I also have other questions. So what would you prefer first?
Do the rebuttal first.
Okay. There's this. There is this. There's actually one more. Sorry. Thank you. Sorry.
Thanks.
I'll say thanks once.
Prior to the board looking at this, I would like to review the material and ensure it's appropriate that they are submitted and accepted.
Okay.
And so, certainly off the top, the information that the assessor has provided here would properly be provided in their evidence. This is new evidence. This is not rebuttal.
It's rebutting your cap rate from your information that's been provided.
And I very specifically referred to the Johnson report, and I'm happy to have you rebut that. But this is,
There's more than one report out there with regards to vacancy.
similarly, page number 10, I do note that this was apparently submitted on a different property. It looks to me like the department included it in one of their previous briefs, but not here. So certainly the pages numbered at the bottom, 9 and 10, I would submit should be properly excluded. Information on 11 and 12 is, again, just...
It's another version of the Johnson report, which wasn't included in your brief.
Okay, so if I might just finish, is from the Johnson report, and I have no objection to that. The information on page 13, 14, 15, and so the remaining pages from 13 on are all new evidence and should properly be excluded. And I will deal with the other handbooks.
Well, we'll take them and then we'll assign the weight that we deem fit.
So the question then becomes, I would object to any questioning from the assessor with respect to those pages.
Well, you might object. We'll note your objection. Go ahead.
No, I'm not quite done, because there are two other packages I understand that Mr. Pollock has handed out. Now, he has included in his brief from the Johnson report industrial land sales. I would object to this entire package. That should have been included in his information. I have referred to let me just finish. He should have included it within his information. If he wishes to rebut the land sales that I'm presenting, that's fine. If we're going to open the door to new evidence by way of rebuttal, then we will certainly be bringing forward, for example, in cases where the city has applied a land valuation versus for improved property, or a land-only valuation for improved property, we will certainly be bringing in fresh evidence on that area. So the package, starting at page put together, but the page number at the bottom is 103, should be excluded as well. For those reasons, I have no objection to the municipal order.
Okay, what is the proposed use of this information?
Which one?
This one.
This one here, well, I think the best way to start off is that
Well, just tell me what.
on page, well, with regard to the municipal board, the terminology used that there was $1 per square foot listed as a nominal value. There's a couple issues here. First of all,
Well, no, I asked you a question about
okay,
this. What use did you intend?
to show how on page 14 of his brief, he's assigned one value per square foot with regards to value of land.
Mm-hmm.
This document here shows inflation has changed in over 22 years, that the decision that took place in 1998 should have no bearing or no weight on the market value of land for a 2018 reference date of April 1st. So what this is showing you how sales have increased from a decision, because the board order that's been quoted here that I've included was dated on September 11th, 1998. And this information here shows how land values have increased since then. So putting a dollar value on a board decision that happened, 22 years ago should have little weight, so that's why I included this
Okay.
documentation.
For that purposes, it would be admissible.
Well, except that that's not our evidence in this matter, and so I would say that the assessor has included his own land sales. We have included all our own land sales. If he wished to have this information before the board, the proper time to do it was at the time of his submission. I'm happy to look
Well,
at-
okay, you are on page 14 quoting the municipal board decision.
Yep.
And.
I'm just bringing it in, and I have no objection to
Yeah,
that.
okay, and then he is responding that there should be inflation added to that value. And he's showing what that land inflation rate is.
Except that we have not, we have referred to the principle espoused in that decision. We have not relied upon the value set out in that decision.
Well, with regard, it's relevant.
I do expect moving forward a much more liberal acceptance of and rebuttal evidence moving forward.
But I have one further question to this, because on page 14, I'm looking for the nominal value of $1 per square foot on here, and I couldn't find it.
And so, if I might, again, let me repeat, and so let's back up for a second.
Okay.
Mr. Froelich has suggested that it was $1 a square foot that came out of the order, and he's just now acknowledged, it's been a question, but he's now acknowledged that that doesn't exist in the order. And so the information that he's presenting in terms of his land sales would then not be relevant. Having said that, and I'm happy to have him present his evidence, but the municipal board order that is referred to in our evidence simply sets out a principle that we looked at. Do not rely on any value that the municipal board came up with in that case.
So is Mr. Borgstrom implying that there should be a dollar land value on all land sales in perpetuity?
Well, we
Because
will,
that's what he's implying in my eyes.
okay, in this instance, this board order on page 5 seems to say that they will assign no value to the land in this instance.
Yeah, I understand that. But the circumstances of that decision was different than the circumstances at the time. If you reference page 4 on the brief,
Okay?
at the time, and the subject property is in the northwest quadrant, it's in the Inkster Industrial Park. The department had decided to use a land to building ratio of 3:1 for this type of property. Since that period of time, we are now using a 4:1 ratio, and the land that we're using is in excess, significantly in excess of. So a decision on the 3:1 ratio is significantly different than a difference, an issue of 4:1.
That's fine, yes.
And so, with that being said, and looking, an eye test, looking at the potential development of the property and knowing that there is potential to expand the operations or to subdivide and to sell it, our position is it does have value. So what I was looking for in the board orders, I was looking for, because it left me with the interpretation based on the municipal order A98-572, we feel that the excess land should have $1 per square foot. I never saw that anywhere in this order.
So let me just come back to the assessor rebuttal evidence. We seem to be wandering far afield here. The assessor made a suggestion that this was to rebut the rate of $1 a square foot in the municipal board order. That's not the case. Appropriate time for him to submit this evidence with his written evidence, and so I will again ask this board to exclude this information in addition to the other information that I objected to in the other package that is covered on the front page. There are 2 pages within here that we would accept. The remaining pages would again, proper, as they have in the past for 1750 Inkster, The remaining pages would properly have been attached in his evidence.
Why would I create a Johnson report with this information here when your comparables support our value, yet you're putting $1 per square foot here? So I had to show this because I had no other choice in this matter. To me, I would have taken the time and energy to create this documentation if you didn't put that $1 per square foot there. It's 22 years away from our reference period.
Well,
That's
I
what-
will say that the board order makes no reference to any value. I mean, questions its applicability in both the direct evidence and the rebuttal. So I think we come down to the comparables, and we've got the better comparables in terms of the land sales.
Yeah, well, and the comparables that Mr. Boardroom has
So
provided.
we'll not,
Okay.
we'll remove those.
So we're not,
Now, in terms of this other
So-
document, what were you,
we can't talk about this at all?
no, we'll exclude it from evidence.
Okay. And the reason behind that is?
Well, because we're relying strictly on the comparable sales that put in your reports.
But what I don't understand though is that he assigns a value here, but he has no dollar sales here with regards to.
Well, that's fine, you can put that into argument if you wish.
Okay, that's just, I need to understand that. And with regards to the board order, if.
The board order is relevant.
I have no objection to that. As I
He refers to the board order, it's fine to put the board order in.
Okay. And with regards to this, with regards in terms of credibility with regards to the applicant's information, what I've done here is the relevance of this is it shows there are many variety of reports that are out in the marketplace with regards to vacancy rates. We've chosen to use 2.5, but there's also a range of information. And Mr. Boardroom has excluded another aspect of the Johnson report, which I've included in here, which sort of tells me that, why is he showing some information from the Johnson report but excluding others?
Yeah, this seems to be relevant.
Well, and again, this is new evidence which should have properly been included.
No, it's not new evidence, it's rebutting, you're the one who presented various segments of the city and divided in area. Now, he is
I will have-
showing it divided into different areas.
I will have a number of questions for the assessor on the rebuttal.
That's fine. That's fine, you're entitled to review. I mean, this seems to me to be relevant, so go ahead on your rebuttal.
So on page, I have it listed as page 9 here. We're showing the trends of vacancy rates within the city of Winnipeg. So what we have here is like, on top of page 9 and the bottom of page 9, we have 3% for Northeast. We got 4.8% for vacancy in the Southeast section. On page 10, we show that the trend's increasing as well to 5.4% from Capital One. So it's sort of consistent with regards to what Mr. Boardroom's saying here. However, the Johnson report, which was excluded in Mr. Boardroom's information package, it just talks about, vacancy rates and whatnot. And so what happens here is, so we just show the trends of industrial rates here. So in 2017, 2016, at the bottom of page 11, we're showing 3.2 and 2.8 for the entire city of Winnipeg. But on page 12, what we're looking at is we're actually looking at the June industrial vacancy rate summary that shows the St. Boniface region from the Johnson report. And if you look, maybe 2/3 of the way down St. Boniface, it shows June industrial vacancy rate summary. So we're using 2.5%, but this document here is showing 1.6, 2.8.
That June of 2018.
18.
Voice reference.
Yep, no problem, but it's partially. And what ends up happening is in 2017, this is from June, so it's part of it, but it also shows 2017 at 2.8%, 2016 at 2.5%, 2015 at 0.6%, and 2014 at 1.5 and 1.3. So I found it interesting that Mr. Boardroom didn't include that in his document. Page 13, what we're looking at here is we're looking at the Cushman-Wakefield report with regards to vacancy.
Okay, did Mr. Boardroom refer to that in his evidence?
It just shows how there's the trend with regards to vacancy rates within the city of Winnipeg. He hasn't included that, but when we look at the vacancy,
Okay, then this would be new evidence then from a different source.
Sorry, which page are we referring to?
page 14.
13 and 14,
Those are excluded?
yes. It wasn't referred to in your evidence, so it's not properly revised.
So just for clarification, so I'm rebutting the subjectivity of the information that he's provided here with other documentation. So why would that be excluded as evidence?
Rebuttal is very narrowly targeted at material that either side has placed in their brief to show that so if he refers to the Johnson report, you're quite free to bring the Johnson report, but you cannot bring a different report that he hasn't referred to. You could have put it in your brief in general,
Okay.
your initial brief, that would be fine. But it's basically new evidence.
Yeah, see, I disagree with that, but okay. So, and with regards to my information, with regards to the industrial marketplace that is taking place from Colliers, with regards to on page 10.
Yeah, it would be the same, because they didn't refer to colleagues.
So page 10 is excluded?
Yeah, what we are considering is the Johnson report.
That's fine.
So even though there are other reports out there that shows that vacancies are lower than what's been portrayed, I tried rebutting that, and you're putting no weight on that, or I can't exclude that. I'm still sort of puzzled by that.
Well, as I say, rebuttal is narrowly focused on what he presented in his brief, so he's referring to the Johnson report. You can put in the Johnson report and refer to that, which you have done. But any other new, like Cushman, Wakeman, Colliers, if you wanted to support your vacancy rate, it should have been in your briefing.
So just for my clarification, we are admitting pages 9 and 10.
Yeah, and the rest.
And 21, and, sorry, page 11 as well as 12, but excluding 2018 information.
Yep.
Thank you. Now, if the assessor is done with his presentation.
I'm not done with my
Okay,
question.
once he's done, I will have, not as many questions, but I will have some.
Okay. So just to clarify, your statement on page 14 is the word listed in this municipal board order that you quoted.
Okay, you presented your rebuttal.
I'm asking a question with regards to your brief that you provided here.
Sorry, my page 14.
Your page 14.
So you've moved on from your rebuttal to, no,
No, I am presenting rebuttal, and so I am trying to find.
and so let me just back up for a second, Mr. Chair, if I might. It would seem to me to be appropriate for the assessor to conclude his presentation of the rebuttal, after which I will ask him questions about it, and then after which he's free to question me on our evidence. Sequentially, it would seem to be make sense logically.
Well, he's presenting the rebuttal. He's asking, you referred to the...
I'm happy to answer the questions, don't get me wrong, just to keep things clear in our minds.
Yeah, he can ask you questions on the evidence he has
Okay.
presented in the rebuttal.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, can you reference your statement in page 14 of,
Well, in that case, and as I referred to earlier, I was referring to the principle espoused by the municipal board in that case. It's not dealing with a rate per square foot, as you seems to have indicated earlier. Rather, that particular property had lands greater than the department thought would be normal. And the municipal board actually found in that case that no value should be attributed to those surplus or excess lands. In this particular case, we have allocated an amount based on my opinion of the contributory value of those surplus lands.
and what is that value of the contributory value of those lands?
Contributory value of those lands,
Yeah.
in my opinion, are $209,000,
And what does that work out to be a square foot?
based on a land area of 209,469 square feet, and that figure actually came from the department in previous appeals.
The value is $1.
For your
We don't
reference,
need to.
the dollar, yeah.
Let's get
That's
moving
okay.
here. We're
Yeah.
trying to.
Just, and with regards to the inflationary factor, that we're not including this either, right?
That's right.
Okay.
I do have some questions of the assessor on his rebuttal evidence.
Okay, so, but I do have other questions with regards to his presentation.
Yeah, we'll get to those questions
no,
after. He's
yep.
the question you want
No
to
problem, I just want to make sure.
And just very briefly, I want to now refer you to this document,
Yes.
and actually the first 2 pages. And you'll see-
Didn't you want those excluded?
No, we agreed to the Johnson report to keep that in.
Okay,
But
but
also-
the first 2 pages
So-
were excluded though from my presentation. So why are we asking questions on that? Because if he's asking me questions on this, but this is the same document as my other rebuttal, so I'm
It is-
confused.
Okay, the first 2 pages from the Johnson report.
Okay.
Okay, so when I clarified the chair.
Well, excuse me, I asked him a question.
Sure, okay.
Are the first 2 pages from the Johnson report?
They're on pages 11 and 12.
11 and
No,
12?
yeah, because this is Cushman Wakefield. So this report,
So this is Cushman Wakefield.
on page 9 and 10,
I believe this is from Capital Commercial.
of capital stuff. Yes, that's true. But the thing is, with regards to vacancy, if you can't, if some of my information is being excluded, why is he asking me questions on information that's been excluded?
Well, and so perhaps.
Well, I think we did allow this to be placed in evidence based on the idea that he presented a breakdown by location.
Well, but other aspects of my brief had, my rebuttal evidence had location as well, and I wasn't able to include that. That's why I was asking for consistency.
So I'm happy to have pages 9 and 10 before you, or not if the assessor wishes to withdraw them at this point in time. But one way or the other, we'll have some questions. Did the board wish to discuss this?
Yeah, we'll take a short time out here and discuss. Okay, we reconvene and we will allow pages 11 and 12, which is only the Johnson report, as well as, of course, the board order that was previously referenced.
Thank you.
So you were questioning the assessor on his.
Well, yeah, and so initially I was perhaps misunderstanding that you were allowing pages 9 and 10 of this document. Now that they are excluded, I have no questions of the assessor on his rebuttal evidence.
Okay. Brent, any questions on the rebuttal evidence?
I have no questions.
Any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so continue with your presentation.
thought I had concluded my presentation.
Now it's just questions.
Oh,
My
yes,
questions.
sorry, yes.
My apologies, I'm,
Okay, you can questions on the main presentation.
Okay. I'll just try to make it short and sweet. Why would a bank lend $10 million for a property with a $2 million deposit on a property that you only believe is worth $8.5 million in the marketplace
I
today?
have no knowledge of what the bank did. I am aware of other instances where there were personal undertakings or other securities offered in exchange. I don't have any information on the mortgage, nor do we rely on mortgage amounts to establish value. If a property was paid out entirely and had no mortgage, I don't think you'd be in here, or I certainly wouldn't be in here suggesting it had zero value.
You've included in your documentation, but you haven't talked about it today. So I have a quick question with regards to the cap rate study and with regards to the sales per square foot that was listed here. Which would be, on page 13 of your cap rate study, the closest comparable to the subject property?
In terms of what?
Sales per square foot.
None of the properties would be comparable to the subject. It is significantly larger than any of those comparables.
I see. Well, what we have here is comparable number 3.
Excuse me, which?
So he has this cap rate study.
The cap rate study, yeah.
So it's on this document here, sorry, and page 13. No, you don't have it there. It's included in his,
Is that, yeah,
Separately filed.
yeah.
the bottom of your file there.
So you're referring to which page in there?
Page 13?
Thank you.
So right at the bottom, underneath all your documents.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks so much. I appreciate that.
No problem. So on page 13, if I heard your statement correctly, you said the subject property is larger than all the comparables that are on page 13?
That's exactly what I said.
Okay, so on comparable index number 3, at Keith Road in Sherwin,
Yep.
it has a leasable area of 265,000 square
These
feet.
are two separate roll numbers. I don't know if you're aware of that, but those are two separate roll numbers. Similarly, the subject property with 2/3 of the building having 14-foot wall height, they're very different. They are located in very different areas. So I don't rely on the sale price per square foot, certainly.
Okay, but the point is, building number 1 has a floor height of 14 square feet, and what's been presented here is that the,
Building number 1,
yes, no, index number 3,
yes.
building number 1 in the subject property has 106,000 square feet at 14 feet. So would that
Our
be quite,
information is that it's 17 foot.
okay, but did you not say,
Our information is that, you're referring to the capitalization rate study, our information in here is that it's two rolls. The wall heights are 17 to 19 feet. The subject property has about 2/3 of its building area with 14-foot wall height.
okay, but between 14 and 17, that's pretty close. You're not dealing with, 14 and 25.
Well, you can call it fairly close. I would call it 25%. It's a significant difference between 14 foot in terms of industrial uses, between 14 and even 17 foot.
And so with the two properties, are they exactly 200, so is it a 50-50 split, or
It's
is
a
it?
multi-tenanted property.
Yeah,
None of the occupants have I shouldn't say significant. These are both multi-tenanted properties.
no other questions?
On this presentation total?
Yeah, I think I'm done.
Yeah. Okay. Brent, any questions?
I have no questions.
Okay. Any
I
questions?
have a question, sure. Just paraphrasing here, you mentioned 2/3 of the building has a 14-foot height as far as ceiling height.
For about 2/3 of the space, there was a subsequent addition with a higher wall height, so obviously then a higher clear ceiling height.
Okay. You mentioned that industry really, this is my word, it's really looking for this type of height. What is the typical height at
So,
industry?
great question. So when you, certainly, and I apologize, my pants keep riding up. When you look at some of the construction, for example, on Wilkes, you see the multi-tenanted buildings, that's the wall height you're looking for. As you're driving out Route 90 on the west side of Route 90, that's north of Inkster, that's actually the RM of the Rosser. And you look at the development out there, some of the buildings are put up on spec, some are not. You will see their wall heights of 25 feet to 30 foot typical. Many of them are multi-bays, those bays, modern expectations, and all of this is included within our cap rate study. I'm happy to show you that. But there you will see similarly 5 to 10,000 square foot in size, 25 to 30 foot wall height. If you look on the east side of Route 90, north of King Edward, north of Inkster, you have, there's a small pocket there, it's called Inksbrook Industrial Area. And you'll see some late 90s to late 2000s construction in there. Same kind of construction, typically multi-bay with 25 to 30 foot wall height. There's also in there the Fairmont Cat repair shop up in that same Inksbrook area. That's also got the high ceiling height. It's a repair center. It's not true industrial, but it's akin to it. Similarly, there you have the high wall height. Those are the modern expectations. And I just referred to one of those. So just let me take you to it really quickly. In terms of the broker reports, Colliers actually very clearly sets out at page 31 of our brief, the capitalization report for industrial properties at page 31. These are the, I don't call them parameters, but these are the definitions provided by Colliers for their cap rate range. And for the subject property would be a single tenant property. And there you will see in the left-hand column, under industrial single tenant, typically steel frame, precast concrete / tilt-up panel. That's the new construction that I'm talking about that you're seeing on Wilkes, Route 90. Buildings 50 to 100,000 square feet. When you get to a single occupant property in a building of this size, that's an additional risk. There are not a lot of tenancies or companies that want single occupancy of that size. 160,000 square feet, give or take, leasable in the subject property. They talk about modern building with average lease duration 10 years, investment grade covenants, and going to talk about the office finish. That's not the case here. When companies sell on the basis of the sale leaseback, and at the risk of diverging too far, when companies engage in a sale leaseback circumstances because they're trying to free up capital, it is a form of financing for their business, and that's why they do it, and that's what happened here. That's what happened with Dufresne Furniture on Panic. That's what happened with Tenor.
Okay, were you kind of veering away from answering the question?
Well, I think I did answer the question, and I talked about the tilt-up.
Okay,
so I'll end it there.
You've answered
Yeah.
the question.
My apologies.
Thank you. No, I appreciate your action. Thank you. Okay, a lot of questions I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and I have no questions, so summation, if you wish.
Yeah, as Mr. Boardroom talked about the new standard of rents, what you got to realize is the model rent that we use is $5.08. It factors in a ceiling height of 14 feet. It factors in a ceiling of 25 feet. When we're looking at market evidence, why would a bank mortgage that much money with regards to the sale price of a property 4 years away from the reference date? We believe our rents are fine. With regards to the additional land value that we've supported, we provided market evidence to show a realistic sales per square foot for the excess or surplus land, depending upon the use for the company. The applicant has provided values that have supported our values in terms of the land value that we've used. So overall, I believe that the value that we've used here for the property of $12,477,000 is fair. Thank you.
Summation?
I've made all the points I want to make. I do wish to add something to the assessor's statement he made just now. I have been present in previous industrial hearings, more than one, where the assessor under questioning has acknowledged that the model does not account for wall height. There's 5 different factors.
Now you're giving
Location,
evidence, that's not
well,
summation.
And that's fine, but wall height, and he brought it up freshly in summation, wall height is not one of the 5 factors that were identified in previous industrial hearings. I'm happy to go over them, but it is not one of them. Thank you.
Okay, we will go on to 26 Henlow Bay.
Before we start any further, could I ask, I put my water somewhere, I don't know what I did with it. I think I left it in the washroom.
Okay.
No, I think I just took it with me, and I left it on the change area for the.
Okay, now that I'm sure that thousands of people are watching on,
There's a bottle of water in that other boardroom.
yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yes.
We were wondering when you were going to come back and find it there.
Oh, you know.
Okay, 26 Henlow Bay.
Just threw it here for a sec. File number is 19 for.
Excuse me, I just looked at your brief. There is a post-reference date sale in there with the little
Oh, did I?
on page 5.
Yeah, I forgot to exclude it.
Can I have that value?
You know what? As you said, Mr. Borgstrom, one sale does not make a marketplace.
I agree with that entirely, and we've not included it with this.
Yeah, it's, you know, yeah.
I was joking.
Yeah, no, it's tires. File number is 194711. Roll numbers 03-09125-9900. For 2020, we have assessed value of $5,730,000. We have 2 buildings here. They were built between 1990 and 2000. We're using effective year of 1995. We have a wall height of 15 feet. We have a land area of 147,773, and we have a leasable area of 62,817, and we have a land to plat area of 3.49. Pictures on page 2 show just a layout of what it looks like from the ground level. Page 3 shows just an overall view of the building site plans. The bottom of it shows, top part shows where it's located at, you know, in the Park Area Industrial Park area, just south of Skurfield. Page 3 shows the layout of it where, you know, you can see the additional land for parking and whatnot. Bottom of page 4 just shows some pictures that I was able to find on the web with regards to the finish and whatnot of the quality, what they have here for pictures.
Is this the former Canjin?
Yes, it is. I do believe so. I think that's what you told me, did you not?
I'm sure.
What's that?
You don't know.
I'll
get to it in my submission.
You know, that's what I recall you stating, Mr. Borgstrom. Page Property owner has been compliant with regards to filling out the income expense mailer. That hasn't always been the case, but they did fill it out in 2016, 2017. It is an owner-occupied building. We have this space listed as a flex warehouse standard. We have a total area of 62,817 square feet, and we have a blended rate of $8.28. The gross potential rent is $520, $533. What we did here is we applied a 20% vacancy for this property because it had a significant vacancy issue, and it has been over the past couple of years. So we carried that through. We have expenses at 2%. We have shortfall of 3.75% to come up with a value of $360,986. Our cap rate is 6.3% only, and the reason why it's that low is because we're looking at other properties that are in the neighborhood. It is a newer building, and what we've done is we've made the adjustment to the overall value with the vacancy, which is why that vacancy is so high. In the southwest quadrant, the vacancy rate is actually 2.5%. So this is a significant concession that the assessment department has made. We come up with a value of $5,730,000, which is very similar to the value that had taken place in the past. What I have here for comparables, I just brought some comparables that are in the neighborhood. They range from $5.75 to $8.25. We've discussed our cap rate study, and that concludes my formal presentation.
Okay, questions?
I do have just a few. You're showing here on your page 1 that the wall height is 15 foot.
That's what we have in our model.
Do you know if that's accurate?
You know what? I have, looking at the pictures of it, some aspects of it are, some aspects are lower. Because if I look at the top of page 4, so the top of page 4, the second picture at the very right, that looks like a 15-foot wall height for parts of the building. Mm-hmm. And other aspects would probably be 12. And usually I write that down, but I did not write that down this time. Just bear with me here for 1 sec. I want to look at our brief prior to that. Yeah.
Not sure?
Not sure.
Okay, that's fine. So just to confirm, the pictures shown on page 4 do not arise from your inspection of the property?
No, I have not had the opportunity to inspect the
And
property.
in fact, these are pulled off the website. Do you know when they were pulled off the website?
I just got them recently, so
Do you know when the pictures were taken that were posted on the internet?
I don't have access to that information. I took the pictures to prepare the brief. I don't know when the pictures were taken.
Okay. So
We have nothing on file.
in terms of what was going on in this location, you indicated that in your evidence at page 6 that the model has assigned certain areas to manufacturing, lab, and office,
That is correct.
and the other area would be office.
Yeah,
So premise ID 898, is that office?
no. That's either, so there's lab, manufacturing, and office. Oh, I wrote it here. How convenient. So, for example, I think, so what happens here, the lowest rent is storage. The 15,198 is manufacturing.
Okay.
The lab is 863, and the office is, I knew I had it somewhere.
And so, from your pictures, are you at all familiar with biopharmaceutical manufacturing?
No, I am not.
I'm surprised you to learn that the layout and the equipment within this building are completely obsolete.
Without having an inspection of the property, how would I know?
And would you have any idea of what it would cost to remove the lab manufacturing component?
Without doing inspection, I would not know.
Okay, fair enough. Were there not any, so let's come at this another way. You show on page 7 a number of rental comparables, correct?
That is correct.
Are these standard office warehouses?
They were under the same quality standard as the FWS standard that we use.
So they are all, what
Flex warehouse standard.
So what I will describe as normal flex warehouses?
That's how we have it listed.
Okay, and that's the information you rely on.
Yeah, and it's consistent with what we've had in the past.
So in your investigation on this file, were there no biopharmaceutical companies in this area?
I can't comment on that because I don't know.
You didn't find any in your investigations?
I did not come across any in my investigations.
Now, you indicated that the model vacancy rate has been adjusted upwards to 20%, but you indicated also that it was vacant for the last, I think you said a few years. Do you know how many years?
This is a new property for me. I do not know.
And you didn't check any old files?
You know what? Time constraints did not allow me to do that.
Okay.
And this is a property that I've never been exposed to before.
So here we have what was at one time a biopharmaceutical manufacturing facility, correct?
Yes.
And so with 15-foot wall height, you indicated that the model accounts on the previous property, you indicated that in your summation that wall height is a factor in the model, correct?
Well, what happens though is there's a lot of factors when it comes to creating rents. We're looking.
Five,
no,
right? There's 5 of them.
Yes.
Okay. Wall height isn't one of them, is it?
Well, usually what happens is we look at wall height will affect rent. And so when we create usually lower ceilings have lower rents depending on the nature of the flex warehouse. We have wall heights that are under the flex warehouse designation that are on Lorimer or whatnot where the rents are a lot higher, but they're brand new buildings here. I could quote properties on Lorimer, I could quote properties on Skirfield where we're dealing with 25 feet, but the market rents are $11.
So let me bring you back to my question about the model. Five factors, right?
Yeah.
Area,
Yeah.
age of the property, size of the building.
Yeah.
Do you know what the other factors are?
You know what? I can't at this time. Age.
So given the, would you agree with me that a lower wall height in the market in general forms additional risk or comprises additional risk to that property?
No, I wouldn't, but a lower wall height will have a lower rent.
I believe those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Kent?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair.
Prince?
I do. Let's focus on wall height. Let's look at the picture on page 2 at the bottom and the area on page 3.
Yeah.
Would it not appear that the first part of the building
Yeah.
is 12 feet?
Yeah.
The second part, and I don't know if they were built in stages, is 15 feet. And I suspect the part to the rear is 20 feet.
That could be the case. I'm just basing it on what we have here. And what I usually do is I usually write each section of the building when they've been built, but I did not do that on this occasion.
Because on the aerial, you can see the step up.
Yeah,
between the
yeah, I can. And so,
Anyway, perhaps for the next cycle, someone can take a look at it. That was my only question.
Okay, now, in interest of full disclosure, I have inspected this property.
Oh.
For a previous municipal board appeal, yes.
Yes, yes. So, that was, what, 15 years ago, probably. So it was the former Canjin facility, oriented towards the lab. How long has it been vacant? Is it, number one, is it totally vacant?
Well, you know, there was a sale that has taken place. What has happened here is that there are four permits taken out at this time. So I think what's happening is in the process, it's going to be occupied in the near future. But I don't know, I have no other information beyond that.
Okay, so you don't know how long it's been vacant?
No, as Mr. Berkshire and I discussed, it's been a couple of years for sure.
Okay, is the...
I can't remember. Everything blurs in.
No, not really.
Oh, you know, you've been exposed to this property a lot longer than I have, Mr. Berkshire.
The issue way back when was there's a whole bunch of mechanical equipment, air circulation equipment that was super adequate for any alternate use. Okay, we'll leave it there, and you can maybe answer the question as to how long it's been vacant and that sort of thing.
Sure, so I'm going to start there. It's been vacant for many years. I have been working with Canjin Corporation. Now, they were actually acquired by Emergent Biosolutions, so EBSI. It's a company in the States. Canjin previously sold off a number of the properties in the States. This one has been offered for sale. I'll describe it as quietly since before 2014. I became involved in their other manufacturing facility within the city at 155 Innovation Drive dating back to 2010. So I've had ongoing discussions with the controller at that time and a number of his successors over the years. I can tell you that this property has been essentially mothballed and dormant for more than a couple of years. Canjin used to run their facilities 24/7, just really quickly to the background. Used to run their facilities 24/7. They had military contracts out of the States for anthrax vaccines, etc. Military contracts dating back to the Gulf War. When those contracts ran out, they had difficulty and still have difficulty in finding lines to replace that manufacturing. I can tell you that the equipment in here is completely obsolete. There are clean rooms, filtration systems. The process now is to use glove and box. So you'll see a box and this guy standing there with his hands in rubber gloves. That's how they do it now. And the cost to remove this equipment is absolutely monstrous. I haven't factored that into my evaluation of the property, but it is absolutely outrageous. I can tell you, I don't know the price, but I can tell you that the previous sale of this property had been arranged, and this dates back to probably 2014. It fell through. And so it has been underutilized. We've made adjustments on the business assessment rule because of that, far in excess of 25%, that the department says is the maximum vacancy policy that the department has. So that will just give you a little bit of background of the facility. In fact, I think we've got some pictures in our submission from your inspection of the property previously. I do know that there was some question as to whether this was a special use property. The municipal board ultimately decided that this was not a quote-unquote special use property, and they applied an income approach to it. And just as an aside, I can tell you that they found the other facility, interestingly, on Innovation Drive, was a special purpose property. And I recently settled the 2014, 16, 18, and 20 appeals on it. 14, 16, and 18 were all standing at the municipal board, and we came to a resolution on those appeals. Business is bad in the pharmaceutical industry. Okay, so We took a look at the property. I have familiarity with the property, as you might gather. I have included a bit of a description on page 3. It's a very brief description. Perhaps showing a little clearer about the varying wall heights in here is our pictures on page 4. And so, in the bottom picture, this is looking at the property. Obviously, an oblique view of the property. The structure on the right-hand, or the left-hand side is clearly something closer to a 10 or 12-foot wall height. The structure in the middle appears to be, as Mr. McIntyre described, I would estimate it pretty close to 15 feet. There is a lower wall height section immediately adjacent to that, so we need to be very careful about just looking at a street level picture, and that's why I provided the obliques. You'll see another section there with lower wall height, lower than 15 feet if we have set that as being the middle section. And then adjacent to that is some higher wall height. But overall, I would say more than half of this property would be described as low wall height in terms of industrial standards. I took a look at some rental comparables on page 8. Now, I'm going to tell you that the leasable area of this property is 62,817 square feet, and I didn't ask the assessor about it, but in my mind, economies of scale factor into it. So we need to start to consider not properties half the size, but if you consider the principle of economies of scale, larger properties, single occupant, low rent, lower rate per square foot, all other things being equal. So I took a look at a number of rental comparables here. They're all in the Fort Garry area. Of particular interest in this case is our comparable number 131 Hamilton. You recall that I asked the assessor if he found any biopharmaceutical rents in the area. That's an arm's length lease. Viventia, make sure I got the name right here. Viventia Biotech occupies that space. They occupy it in 3 sections. They've expanded business over time. They have a single rate on 2 sections and a slightly higher rate on the 3rd section. They occupy the entire building, and the overall rate, as I described here, is $6.54 a square foot. Now, they've been on a month-to-month lease for a considerable amount of time, which means that they could leave at any time. But the posted and stated rent, and I could talk about it because it's a client, is $6.54 a square foot. We do show the other rental comparables. The one in Sony Place, that's the former Genesis Distribution Center, and the space in there. That particular space, 51,489 square feet, is actually occupied by Rehouse, so that is in fact the industrial space, and as are all of the other ones. So I took a look at all of these, considered the age of the property, and in my judgment, $7 per square foot rent is appropriate to apply to this vacant property. The city, as we've indicated, applied 20%. I disagree. It's been chronically vacant for a large number of years. So we have adjusted that to 25% in our submission. There's no disagreement with respect to shortfall. There is, again, the difference between the 2% non-recovered and the 7% non-recovered. In this particular case, again, we disagree with the 6.3% cap rate. It's based on our additional risk factors, low wall height being one of them. I've adjusted that to 7% in terms of my judgment for this property. And so we go through the calculations on page 10. We're looking for a reduction to $3,540,000. I was aware of the 2018 sale. I have not referred to it in our brief. And the pictures of the property we show at pages 13 and following.
You left out the one of me wearing the lab coat.
I did. Full disclosure, yeah. I did not take these pictures. This, as Mr. Hardman referred to, these were taken during a previous inspection. Interestingly, we actually had I think I actually made the request that the Board of Revision go visit Innovation Drive, and the municipal board actually went out and saw this property for themselves. Quite, well, I'm going to say more than 5 years ago. Yeah, quite a while ago.
I would guess
Yeah.
2005 or 6, something like
Could
that.
well be. So, I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Questions?
On page 8 of your brief,
Yes.
aren't the majority of your comparables significantly older than the subject property?
All but one. The one on Spearfield is newer.
Okay.
They are older, but I can tell you that in Hamlin, being occupied by Viventia Biotech will have had some significant renovations going on in there that I don't think are reflected in the age that's shown here.
Okay. Well, I'm just going based on your data here. And so the subject property was built in 1995, is that correct?
No.
Well, that's the effective age.
Yes.
That's the effective age, correct?
Yes, and so if you take a look at our page 20, I think that based on just the photos, the oblique photos of the property, this is actually from the assessment department's records. I think those records are suspect. It's pretty clear to me in looking at it that it was built in more than 2 sections. But one section is 1 story, and one section the department shows as 2 story. They show one section as being built in 1990 and the other in 2000. Those are city records. I don't necessarily agree with them. Just looking at the overhead shots of the looks to me like it's built in 4 or 5 sections.
Yeah, because but wouldn't have that been built to suit for the needs of the organization? Because I think there's probably 3 distinctive wall heights
the
here.
property was originally an industrial property, and it was acquired by Kanji, and I'm pretty sure you'll be aware of that. The property was actually acquired by Kanji and then expanded, and all the equipment put in to meet their, at that time, manufacturing needs.
So was the expansion on the eastern part of the building?
You know, I don't have that information with me,
Yeah. So,
but I'm telling you with certainty that they acquired an industrial warehouse type property and then subsequently expanded it.
but wouldn't comparable number 6 be most similar to?
No, that's comparable number 1 would be most similar.
Yeah. But it's, the difference in age is like,
Viventia Biotech, same type inside.
what was the vacancy rate that you used last time?
To be honest, I don't know if I had this property in here last time. No, 30 plus years, it gets a little blurry.
You mean you don't remember?
No.
Did you make that comment to me?
I remember the details of the building, but I can't tell you.
Okay, I was
when
curious.
appeared here.
Okay. And so usually with a chronic vacancy situation, be for properties that are, inferior more in terms of building quality and location?
Absolutely not.
No. Do you have any other examples of 25% vacancy in the southwest quadrant of the city of Winnipeg?
Well, I don't know about the southwest quadrant, but I can certainly tell you that the municipal board has, on at least 2 occasions that I'm aware of, rejected the policy of the department and applied at least 30% in one case, and I think 35 in another.
Okay.
Based on there was acknowledgement at that time by the assessor appearing before the municipal board that was a policy only of the department and that it was not in writing.
But isn't there a situation when the vacancy rate becomes so high, you can't even evaluate it on the income approach to value?
Which is why I've applied only 25% here.
Looking at the pictures of the subject property on page, the office space in pages 15 and 16, if this was other than the county building, wouldn't that rent in the marketplace for at least $9 a square foot?
Not separately. It's one economic unit.
but isn't the quality of the space?
It would not rent separately, there would be an overall rate applied. Now, I understand that modeling might separate out the different areas, but the market, it doesn't work like that. The Bench is a prime example of that. All of the other properties are a prime example of that, where they will include industrial space and an office component. That's expected in the market.
But looking at the layout of the property, no further questions.
Okay, questions, Brent?
I have no questions.
Ken, questions?
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and I have no questions either, so thank you for your presentations. One more. 9:01 meeting, the time was 20 after 3. I shouldn't have said that. No, we got it right. What? Yes. Here. All the matter is, if it gets too long, we'll have to. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. 7-minute break.
I finally got the look.
7-minute break. That's how long it takes to smoke a cigarette. I'm told.
Ain't that the truth?
So, just for the record, you know, this whole line.
Okay, we come to our last property, 901 Regents. So you can commence.
File number is 193773, roll number is 090074000100. In 2020, we have a value of $5,034,000. We have 5 different buildings, all 1 story. They've been built through 1960 to 1979. We have a current effective year of 1972 for this property. Wall height is between 10 to 32 feet. We have a land area of 404,646, and we have a leasable area of 64,673. The land to plant area is 6.42, which is a bit higher than normal. And during my analysis of this property, I'm going to ask for the value to be confirmed. I looked at changing the market rent of it, but then if I change the market rent and then if I added the value of the surplus land for other development of the potential, I thought that the assessment overall is quite fair. On page 2, it's a picture from Regent Avenue of the subject property, showing some just general pictures and showing the access to it with regards to on the side running. Oh, I can't remember that on the side running north-south. And trials and tribulations of getting older with glasses. So anyway, so on page 3, we see the side street is actually Bellavue. I can't even say it right now, where it is. So there you can see on page 3.
Bienvenue Street.
Yep. You're welcome.
That's a very welcoming street.
And page 4 shows a better picture of all the extra land that they have for this property. And what's distinctive about this is because behind it is Transcona Boulevard, and if anyone knows how much development is taking place in that quadrant, there's tons of multifamily, single-family units, condos, apartment blocks, homes being built. And I always say to myself, if they built a housing complex on Dugald and Plessis, why couldn't they do something there if the owner chose to sell that parcel of land? So that's why when I looked at the valuation of this, I'm comfortable with the assessed value. Page 5 shows the pictures from the north of the subject property, and just the bottom of page 5 shows some additional pictures. For top of page 6, we've used the calculation of 145,594 square feet.
Sorry, top of page 6.
Page 6, it should be
Got a picture. Okay, yeah.
145, 594.
Okay, at the top, sorry, thank you.
And that's how when I looked at the calculations. I have another workup here. And so when we're looking at that, you know, that's something that opened up for me when you look at this properties more closely. Property owners have been compliant with regards to filling out income and expense mailer information. It is owner occupied and they've showed their expenses here. There was a sworn value for this property at $3.5 million. That took place in June 2nd of 2015. And page 8 shows the workup for our property. So what I've done here is that we're using a rent of $5.80 for $64,673. Comes up with a potential rent of $375,103. We use 2.5% vacancy. Expenses and shortfall come up with a net operating income of $347. With a cap rate of 7%, we come up with a value of $5,034,000. In my analysis, what I had done, and I have a workup here with regards to why I feel our value is fair. I actually dropped the rent to $5.15. It is an older building. And so with that being said, I used that surplus land of $145,594 at $3.50 a square foot.
I'm sorry, I'm lost.
Where
are you?
This is why I'm justifying.
Well, okay, so this will be, again, new evidence that...
Well, I am defending the value. I am showing why I feel the value is fair. I don't feel this is new evidence. Or I could even make a recommendation here and show it here because my recommended value is a bit lower than what the assessed value is.
Well, if it's a new valuation, unless you're going to put it in as a recommendation.
Well, I'll put this in as a recommendation then.
Okay.
My new recommended value is $4,969,000.
4969?
$4,969,000, yeah.
Okay, then you can hand out your recommendation.
1.3%.
Thanks.
What's that?
1.3%.
Well, what's happening here is that I feel that the value is fair overall. And for me to justify my position, I feel that's being, I think it makes sense. So when we look at this, and you know, after creating the brief and whatnot and doing some analysis, so what I did here is the $145,594. I could have included, you know, land sales and whatnot, but I felt comfortable with the value that we had here, so I put additional value on that land at $509,579, which is how I come up with the $4,969,000. We looked at my land comparables from a previous brief with regards to the Burback property, and a part of my justification for that was on the Burback property we used 367. Even though I think this property is actually much superior in value, I'm not asking for an increase. I just feel like the assessed value should be confirmed. So I used $3.50 for the land, and then when I looked at large parcels of land that have sold recently in the northeast quadrant, I got properties on Peguis that have sold for $16 a square foot.
So again,
Well, again, actually, you're kind of going into new evidence.
Okay, well, I'm justifying my position of why I believe that the assessed value is fair.
Yeah, well, you said you used $3.50.
Yep, exactly. But I also stated that I believe that the value could be higher. So I feel comfortable with the overall assessed value. I've made a recommendation on that. Based on my comparables, what I've done is I've shown some comparables here that are located in the Transcona area. The rents range from $4.15 to to $6 a square foot on page 9. And everything else we've discussed, that concludes my final presentation. Thank you.
Okay, any questions?
I do. Now, you made a recommendation for a reduction of 1.3%, right?
Yep.
And part of that is based on a valuation of land.
Including land in the overall value of the property.
And so the lands are zoned industrial, correct?
That is correct.
We're talking about the lands north of the structures.
Yes, that is correct.
And so do you know where services run along here?
Where there's been so much development that have taken place there,
Not along Regent Avenue.
there is going to be a housing development which is taking place, which will be taking place off of, in this entire area.
So do you know where services are available from in this location?
I do not. See, the thing is my guess is that the closest available for a service would be to the east of the subject property, because there's a lot of parcels of land being subdivided here. So I believe, without looking at it, that they would be able to access services from the northeast portion of the site.
Yeah, from the northeast portion of the site.
Which is actually quite close.
So that, the northeast portion of the subject site doesn't have a road on it, correct?
No,
In fact, Ravelston stops and goes north, right?
Galveston stops and goes north, correct?
Or rather,
Yeah.
yeah. So there is no road access at the rear, there's no reason to bring in services there, right? Do you know where services would be available from the northeast corner?
Well, would it be at the end street of Ravelston, would it not? From the buildings from Ravelston?
So if we take a look at your picture on, bear with me. No, it's
On page 4,
well, I'm looking at page 3, right? Which is a little distorted, but it gives us a better picture.
page 4 on the other side gives a better picture though.
But it doesn't give us the pan, doesn't it? So if we take a look at your page 3, you'll see there that Ravelston isn't developed, and in fact, there is no development in that entire area on your picture, right?
Well, but to the immediate east of the subject property at 401 Regent, there are buildings there.
So in terms of services, we would be including things like sewer and water,
Yep.
hydro,
Yep.
natural gas. So do you know what it would cost to run it from where it's available across other people's properties to the subject?
Which is why I haven't assigned a super high value to it. I've assigned a value which is quite reasonable.
You looked at some sales, and you said you based it on the previous information from Burmac, and you came up with 367 there.
I thought that was fair.
But Burmac apparently doesn't have the same issues with services as these lands, right?
Not necessarily so, but I can't comment for sure.
So you don't know and you didn't investigate.
Time permits.
It is fair to say, though, that the model, that the land building ratio on this property is 6.42 to 1.
Yep.
And the model has not made an adjustment for that land ratio.
I don't believe so.
And in fact, that's your evidence within your brief, right? There is no adjustment?
Yes.
On your page 8?
As you would know that.
Well, this is your evidence, right? Page
No,
8.
but you know how we create the models, so. Similar to the Burmac property, there is value to this.
Which the city has not included in their 2020 assessment.
Not at this time.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, Brent, any questions?
I have no question.
Kent?
I have no questions.
Okay, Then I have no questions, so you can proceed.
Okay, the first thing I'm going to tell you is that this property is located actually on Regent Avenue. When you look at industrial development along Regent Avenue, it's all legacy, it's historical. Nothing industrial has been built along, to my recollection, along Regent Avenue in the last certainly 40 years. There have been additions to this property, but it was originally constructed in 1960. So the area has grown up around it. The assessors, if I take a look at page 4, and the top picture, I've included both an oblique and the top picture. Immediately surrounding this picture is a combination of some auto dealerships, and there's an industrial property that I dealt with earlier this cycle across the Avenue property or street. The likelihood of any potential residential development on the rear edge is slim to none. And I'm fond of saying slim left on this morning, so it's not a realistic projection. So I did take a look at the property as it is developed. Yes, it has a high land building ratio, but really as with the previous municipal board order, really in this location, given the industrial market along Regent Avenue and the difficulties for access and egress as an industrial property, it really doesn't contribute anything to the value. So I took a look at some rents. We show those on page 9. I took a look by, I did my search by age and by size, and nothing in the Transcona area popped up. These are the rental comparables that I show. The range, you'll see the range there from as low as 328 a square foot and up. Average is 425, median 411, legal 475 per square foot. I do want to bring you back really quickly to page 3. This property has been developed actually in 5 sections. More than 1/3 of the space was built in 1960. So this is an older industrial property that's had some additions put onto it subsequently. The weighted average age of the improvements is 1969, and the department has assigned a variant year built, or an effective year built as out 1972. So I took a look at these rental comparables, and I've assigned 475 a square foot. In terms of rebuttal for the assessor's information with respect to the lands, we've already provided our rebuttal on Burmac, and we've provided enough copies for this property. I don't intend to go over that again, but I just want to on the record that it is as submitted for this property as well. Now, Transcona, in terms of vacancy, provides a very interesting look. Regent Avenue is not a location which would have any attraction in the market for an industrial property. It's not an industrial park along Regent Avenue. Access and egress, it's a high volume traffic artery. It is not, access and egress to this site is not particularly easy, given all of that. It is in its location on Regent, it is not adjacent or not in close proximity to, example, Route 90 or South Winnipeg, Route 90 in the northwest, or even further north and east of this to for the south and east for the Inkster, so the St. Boniface Industrial Park. But I did take a look at the Johnson report, and I already referred you, told you what it is when it comes out, that the department looks at it. We show our vacancy rates on page 12. The really, to me, curious thing was the Transcona vacancy for properties including owner-occupied. And you see there at the top of page 12, for industrial properties in Transcona, including owner occupied, which by definition is 100% occupied, 8.6%. The multi and single tenant investment properties for industrial properties in Transcona, much, much higher than that. We have considered that. We've still applied only 6% on our page 13 in our calculations and analysis. As before, no disagreement with shortfall, we have the 7% covered. The capitalization rate in this case, you have a property that is not in a great location for an industrial property. You have more than a third of the building area built in 1960. That requires, in my judgment, a departure from the city's model capitalization rate, which, as you read through the assessor's information, is 7%. I've adjusted that to 7.5% to reflect those factors. Go through the mathematics on page 15. We're looking for a reduction to $3,387,000. And I believe that's the information that I want to present. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions?
Do you know if the 2018 values at the municipal board for this property?
I do not.
Okay. You know what the value was in 2018? Yeah, it was a $3,814,000.
You know what, that's not a starting point for me. I look at the value indicators as of the reference date, and that's what I rely on.
And a sworn value of $3.5 million.
Was a business, it was a corporate thing. They have a consideration of $1. We're not relying on that.
So would that be a starting point?
$1?
Yeah.
No.
No, the $3.5 million.
No.
Okay. And what does
It was a multiple property corporate, what's the word I'm looking for, restructure. And so my client is actually Canada Record. They own a number of properties in the city, including one in Chester. This is another one of theirs. So it was a business restructuring.
Okay. So in your vacancy analysis of Transcona, would that be on the bigger end or the smaller end of available industrial inventory in terms of the Johnson report?
In terms of the Johnson report?
Yeah. So then the area of actual square
If
footage.
you've asked, let me just look it up.
Okay, no problem.
It is bigger than some and smaller than others.
So what's actually?
Generally speaking, I would suggest that the inventory available in Transcona would be at certainly below the median for the city of Winnipeg in general, but that's also a function of the desirability of the area.
Are you
There's no
saying
demand, there's not a lot of demand in Transcona.
it's in the east quadrant of the city of Winnipeg? You know,
It's
there's,
certainly in the east half of the city, sure.
you know, and so, but if you would have one tenant that became vacated, would that not affect the overall vacancy percentage?
It depends on the size of the area that was vacated.
But what happens though, if you look at the report from the Johnson report, isn't there one significant area that has a huge impact on the higher vacancy that you're seeking?
It's possible, I don't know.
Well, you have it in front of you, and I'm asking you the question.
Well, that's true. In looking at the evidence that we've presented in our brief, we don't go into that.
But wouldn't it be applicable?
So just back up. So if we look back at our page 12, now, if we look at the period just from 2013 onward to 2017, that's at the top of the page. That includes owner-occupied properties. And as we look across the spectrum, the lowest rate in there is 6.9%, including owner-occupied properties. So in all of those 5 years, I wouldn't consider the impact of a single tenancy in there to have dramatically affected that.
Okay. But the data in the Johnson report, because when I went through the analysis
And
of it,
that's what we've set down
but
here.
when I actually looked at but because the inventory is smaller, and if you have one major player that causes the vacancy, that would impact the higher vacancy amount, would it not?
Well, except that from 2013 to 2017, it ranges between 6.9 and 8.6. If you look even at just 2016, it was still 8.5.
But overall, though, when we're looking at the east quadrant, would it not be, we're looking at the entire area?
The Johnson report actually is a very detailed survey of all of industrial, office, retail, commercial markets. And he divides the areas into the various industrial areas within the city. He has divided the industrial areas very distinct from each other into 11 separate areas within the city of Winnipeg. And this property is located in the Transcona area.
Okay, just bear with me here for 1 sec. I just want to reference something if I can. I don't know where it is. So, on the Burmac property, no, I'm good, sorry, thank you. Sorry, I double checked something and I read it wrong. And what's the sale value per square foot of this property?
There isn't, well, the only
The
reported
value that
sale,
you're seeking?
I have no idea, I haven't gone through that calculation.
Okay. Is that indicative of other sales of comparable properties in the city of Winnipeg?
Well, we're valuing this on the basis of an income approach, not a direct comparison.
But would you use the direct sales comparison approach to see if you're close within range?
Okay, and so how do you adjust then for a Regent Avenue location?
Yeah, with all due respect, the board doesn't use a direct comparison.
Okay, fair enough.
Nor is there evidence of that in front of you.
But we use that to develop cap rate studies, and so there has to be some sort of validity to the direct sales comparison approach, even though the board doesn't use it. How do you develop a cap rate without a sale?
Well, sales are different in terms of developing cap rates.
No other questions?
Okay, Brent, questions?
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I have no questions then, so thank you for your input today. And we will get back to you in due course. That closes today's hearing.